before the court with his counsel, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Chapman, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Blazer, people represented by Mr. Kelberg and Mr. Lynch. I know all these names. I'll get them. There's Mr. Dart and Mr. Fairtlow with us as well. Mr. Cochran, I suspect we need to wait for Mr. Shapiro.
Yes, let me check in all, Your Honor. Yes,
Right here, Your Honor.
Here he is. All right, we've now been joined by Mr. Shapiro along with Dr. Wolf. Morning, counsel.
Morning, Your Honor.
Give you a second there to get seated, and we'll get.
Sorry for this light delay. Apologize.
All right, Mr. Shapiro, anything we need to take up before we invite the jurors to rejoin us?
No, Your Honor, we're ready to proceed.
Mr. Kelberg?
I agree, Your Honor.
All right, and counsel, I've asked the support staff to provide the doctor with a wireless microphone to make his presentation clearer to all of us, since he's constantly turning away from somebody who needs to hear his testimony. And we'll see how that works. All right, let's have the jurors, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Let the record reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Dr. Lakshmanan, would you please resume the witness stand, please? The record should reflect that Dr. Lakshmanan is again on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Kelberg. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, sir.
You were reminded, sir, you are still under oath, and Mr. Kelberg, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Doctor, I believe we're going to go back to the photo board, Exhibit 355, to finish up an examination of some photographs of the hand and other areas of Nicole Brown Simpson. So, again, with the court's permission.
Yes.
And for the record, Your Honor, we did correct the entry on photograph B23 of Exhibit 352 to reflect that it is the right rather than the left side of the head.
All right, noted for the record. Thank you.
And, Your Honor, we also corrected Exhibit 354, I believe it is, the crime scene board, to show that the photographs were taken on June 13th, 1994, rather than 95 as originally depicted.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kelberg, can I see that just briefly? All right, thank you. All right, doctor, why don't you take the pointer with you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Kelberg.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe, Doctor, we were talking yesterday about B31 and B12 with respect to the palm side of the right hand. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Doctor, was there anything further that you needed to discuss with respect to any findings with respect to the palm surface of the right hand?
No.
Doctor, is there any photograph on this board, Exhibit 355, showing the back of the right hand?
Yes, photograph B1 shows the back of the right hand.
Doctor, would you normally expect at the time of the June 14, 1994 photography process that a photograph similar in nature to the photograph B29 showing the back of the left hand would have been taken of the back of the right hand?
Yes.
Was any such photograph taken?
No.
Are you able, from your examination of photograph B1, to see anything of significance with respect to the back of the right hand?
There is some blood staining, but one can also see a small abrasion on the right index finger, which has been addressed in the report.
Just to set the correct sequence of events, the photograph B1 was taken on June 14th?
Yes.
And is this one of the first photographs that would have been taken in the course of the autopsy process?
Yes.
How can you tell that?
Because this is the dissident is clothed, and this is the first photograph we take in the coroner's office.
Doctor, does this photograph represent fairly and accurately the condition of Nicole Brown Simpson as you saw her initially on June 13th, the day earlier?
More or less.
What is the more and what is the less?
Because I saw her when she was lying on her back in the gurney when she was brought to the office. Right now she's been propped up on her side.
Doctor, even though I think you have a wireless microphone provided by the court, you may be dropping your voice, and it's still, I think, somewhat difficult to hear you.
But otherwise it's the same person.
Yeah.
And the dress is, the clothing is the same which I saw on June 13th.
On June 13th, did you examine the back of the right hand to see whether or not there were any injuries, wounds, or matters of consequence to you as a forensic pathologist?
I didn't do a detailed examination of the body. I only saw the major wound, which is to the neck, which has been discussed. And my purpose was to just get an idea about the two dissidents who were brought to our office, and also assign the criminalist to examine the remains and assign a medical examiner. I didn't examine in detail.
Doctor, the abrasion that you identify on the back of the right hand, again, its location as seen in photograph B1?
It's in the right index finger here.
Can you be any more specific where on the right index finger
It's in the base of the right index.
Doctor, if you'll remember to wait until I finish my question, I'll try and remember to wait until you finish your answer, and I have a feeling the court reporter will be very happy with both of us.
Yes.
I'm sorry, where on the index finger?
The base of the right index finger here.
And when you say base, could you point on your own, showing it to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the area that you see in that photograph?
Somewhere here.
You keep your voice up, Doctor.
Somewhere here, pointing to my index finger here.
And, Your Honor, where the finger appears to join the hand. Now, Doctor, that abrasion, are you able to tell from an examination of the photograph as to whether it was received before, at or around the time of, or after death?
It was an antemortem abrasion.
How are you able to tell?
By the appearance and color, because I examined it with a magnifying glass.
By the way, you had a magnifying glass, I think, over the last couple of days that you have pulled out. Is a magnifying glass one of the tools of the trade of a forensic pathologist?
Yes.
How is it used by a forensic pathologist?
When you examine wounds, when you examine photographs, it's sometimes, not sometimes, it's a good habit to look at the wounds carefully. This way you see any minor even the minor irregularities on a wound margin, and also if the wound is small, it helps you to understand the features better.
Doctor, from what you observed in that abrasion on photograph B1, do you have any opinion as to the manner in which that abrasion was received by Nicole Brown Simpson?
It's a non-specific blunt force trauma.
Which means what?
Well, it's a blunt force injury. It doesn't have any pattern. It doesn't have any specifics to it. It could occur in the same manner the abrasions to the left hand happened, contact with any rough surface.
Doctor, does that abrasion play any consequence in any of the big picture questions that you've been asked to evaluate and about which you have testified to during the course of your presentation here?
No.
Doctor, as long as we're on this photograph B1, in fact, before I move to that other area, did Dr. Golden address that abrasion in any way in his original protocol?
Yes, he did.
Did he diagram it in any way?
Yes, he did.
Does it also get addressed in any addendum?
No.
Doctor, is there anything that you observed of significance between the description in the protocol and the diagram and the photograph showing the actual abrasion B1?
The diagram accurately reflects the injury, but the description, it was erroneously described as ring finger.
Let me take the photos down and let's go and see the actual protocol and diagram. I don't think we're going to lean this up against here. This is one we have to move back. If we could ask counsel and the doctors to switch places with us. We're going to put up boards 0B and 4B from our group 349, Your Honor.
Noted, thank you.
Doctor, where in the protocol is there any reference to that particular abrasion on the index finger on the back of the right hand?
Page 7.
Where, Doctor?
Right here on paragraph number 4.
And that's a two-line paragraph, and it talks about the dorsal surface from our discussion, I guess, on Tuesday. Dorsal is another word for the back of the right hand.
Yes.
And for the record, Your Honor, with a red pen or marker, I'll outline that two-line paragraph, and on the right margin, I'll write B1. Doctor, is that an accurate description of the location of the abrasion that you identified in the photograph B1?
No.
What is wrong?
It says ring finger, but it should be the index finger.
And what I'll do for the record then, Your Honor, is with the blue marker, I will circle the words ring finger on the second line of the paragraph that's already circled in red on page 7 of the Form 12. Doctor, inviting your attention to then the board with the 23 form, do you see any entry there that goes along with the abrasion you identified from the photograph?
Yes, in the right upper quadrant, in the back of the right hand, you can see the abrasion to the right index finger.
Can you make out what is the writing from Dr. Golden regarding that?
It's a reddish-brown abrasion.
And where the doctor has circled in the schematic in the upper right quadrant, this form, I've circled it in red, and with a line going to the side, I'll write B1.
Yeah, and these letters are 1/16th inch punctate abrasion.
I'm sorry, doctor, you'll have to...
1/16th inch punctate abrasion.
Is that an accurate description from your observation of the blunt force trauma abrasion on the index finger as seen in photograph B1?
Yes,
Doctor, would you describe it as a mistake for Dr. Golden's autopsy report to reflect the ring finger as having this 1/16th inch punctate abrasion?
it's a mistake in his dictation, but in his documentation it's not a mistake because he has documented it properly.
The mistake in the dictation, is that of any significance on any of these big ticket questions?
No,
Is there anything further about that particular finding?
no,
Incidentally, doctor, was there, seen by you in the photograph, any abrasion to the back of the right hand at the base of the ring finger, as Dr. Golden's protocol actually says?
no.
And then I think we're done with these, and we'll go back to the photograph. I'm sorry, so we don't move counsel. There's something I can take care of while we have these. Excuse me, just one second, doctor. Doctor, I just wanted to briefly return to the entry that reflected B24 and B23, the sharp force injury that was to the head area of Nicole Brown Simpson, referring to the one that is seen in both of those photographs,
Yes.
B24, B23. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And you recall testifying that there had been an addendum addition made to reflect that Dr. Golden had described it in the diagram in one fashion,
yes,
but the dictation had it in a different form,
yes,
and the addendum then corrected it to reflect what the diagram actually showed. Is that correct?
yes,
Doctor, did you review testimony given by Dr. Golden at a preliminary hearing in this case, in which he was asked questions about the dimensions of that particular injury?
yes.
And inviting court and counsel, if you all want to crowd around, I have it here, to page 70 of the preliminary hearing transcript. Beginning at line 7 and going through line 18. Doctor, did you review the following testimony? Question. Now, Dr. Golden, there were two other wounds you observed with regard to Nicole Brown Simpson's scalp. Is that correct? Answer, yes. There was a cutting wound or stab wound superficially right in the posterior parietal, in other words, lower down here on the right side of the lower scalp. This was a 1 1/2 inch in length superficial wound, only going in 3/8 inch to 1 1/2 inches, a non-fatal wound. And there was a small amount of hemorrhage associated, again, that occurred before death. It was an ante-mortem injury. Doctor, did you review that testimony?
Yes, I did.
Is there an error in that testimony, in your opinion?
Yes.
What is the error?
He used the same information which was in the protocol when he gave the testimony.
And when you say the same information, specifically which information, Doctor?
Page 6, item 6.
The dimensions?
Yes,
And you testified yesterday those dimensions were not the actual dimensions, is that correct?
yes,
And I believe you then testified that the addendum report contains the actual correct dimensions with the change.
Yes.
Now, does this mistake in Dr. Golden's testimony affect in any way your ability to answer any of the big-ticket questions that you've reviewed?
No.
Now I think we're back to the reporters.
All right, you're going back to 355.
Correct, Your Honor. One last question about the back of the right hand shown in B1. Doctor, is there any significance to you in the fact that you observe only one 1/16 inch punctate abrasion at the base of the index finger in the area of the back of the right hand?
Yes.
What is the significance of that observation?
The same reason I gave yesterday, that there seems to be a paucity of defense wounds in the hands of Ms. Nicole Brown Simpson, which would again support my opinion that she was rapidly incapacitated or incapable of resistance when she was assaulted.
Now, Doctor, I want to take your attention back to June 13th, the first day that you saw the body of Nicole Brown Simpson. Were you present for a discussion about whether or not something called a sexual assault kit should be taken in this particular case?
I didn't play a part in the discussion, but we didn't take a sexual assault kit.
Did you, in fact, though, give a concurrence to the determination not to take a sexual assault kit?
I didn't give a determination, but I didn't feel it was necessary.
And did you express that view?
I expressed that view later, but I didn't think it was indicated.
Doctor, you're going to have to...
I didn't think it was indicated.
Now, Doctor, why did you not... First of all, let's define. What is a sexual assault kit?
Sexual assault kit is the process by which you take evidence from the genital area, oral area, rectal area to document whether there's any evidence of sexual assault, which would indicate you basically look for evidence of seminal material in these areas. Or also look for evidence of injuries which could have been from a sexual act which resulted in injuries.
Why did you not feel that it was appropriate or necessary to take a sexual assault kit in the case of Nicole Brown Simpson?
She was fully clothed. The intimate apparel were in place.
The intimate apparel being what?
The panties. They were not in disarray. There were no evidence of any injuries to the thighs, which I could see. And basically, the appearance did not indicate a necessity to do a sexual assault kit. And I did call our criminalist, and he also did not feel it was necessary to take a sexual assault kit because they didn't take any. And later during the autopsy, Dr. Golden also did not see any injuries to the genital area, and there was no indication for taking a sexual assault kit.
With the strength what Dr. Golden saw, I didn't see it here.
Sustain. First, that answer is stricken. The jurist to disregard that portion of the answer regarding what Dr. Golden said or saw.
Did Dr. Golden include in the autopsy protocol, the Form 12, any material regarding an examination of the genital area of Nicole Brown Simpson?
Yes, he did.
And we'll look at it as to the specifics, but if you could summarize what that information was, please tell us.
Basically, there was no injuries observed.
Now, doctor, did you examine the panties for any evidence of tearing, cutting, anything whatsoever that would appear other than the normal appearance of a pair of women's panties?
Yes, I did.
What, if anything, did you observe?
I examined, as I mentioned earlier, I had an opportunity to see the panties first in this appearance when it was on Ms. Simpson, and later on June 22nd when the evidence was viewed with the defense pathologists, Dr. Wolf and Dr. Barton, who are here. And at that time, ultraviolet light was also used. The panty was carefully examined. There was no evidence of any fluorescence, which would indicate a seminal stain. There was some fluorescence from frayed material, and and also there was no evidence of any tears which could be seen. So basically, the panty appeared intact except for some fraying, and the fluorescence was not, which we could see as being from seminal stains.
When you say fraying, doctor, what do you mean?
Fraying means there are some fibers in a panty. Because of wear and tear, you get some fibers which wear and tear, and these fibers fluoresce because the material which the panty is made from.
Doctor, in your experience as a forensic pathologist, can you estimate for us approximately how many cases of rape, murder you have seen?
Significant number of cases. Either I've seen them while doing my autopsies. I've done several dozen strangulation cases myself, plus supervised cases.
And when you say supervised, can you estimate approximately how many homicide cases were handled by your office last year that included evidence of the victim being sexually assaulted?
I don't have the numbers off my top of my head. I have to get the numbers for you.
Doctor, in your experience, have you ever seen a situation where a woman was raped by the murderer, and to rape the woman, her panties would have had to be removed so the penis could be inserted in the vagina and ejaculation could occur, and then before the murderer committed the murder, the panties were put back on the victim and put back on in the appropriate position with no evidence of tearing or any disarray as you've described, as you described was the condition of Nicole Brown Simpson's panties?
Objection, absolutely proper.
Oh,
You may answer the question.
I have not seen any cases like that. The cases where the clothing has been put back on, they are, at least the cases I have seen, they have been put back on improperly, and there's always evidence of assault, which you can see.
What do you mean by evidence of assault that
You'll see blood staining, or because of the trauma involved, and also the zipper, the pant would have been put back in a wrong fashion. The zipper will be in the back instead of being in the front. The panty could be put back on upside down. So what I'm saying is, I've not seen a case where the assault has taken place, the person has been murdered, and where the clothing is in the condition where we see Ms. Nicole Brown Simpson's clothing to have been when we see these photographs.
Would your answer be the same if the sexual assault were changed from one of rape involving penetration of the vaginal area to one of sodomy for penetration of the anal area?
Yes, the same answer. And actually in sodomy you will expect to see definite injuries because you will see evidence of anal lacerations which were not described. There was no, you will find evidence of bleeding, and that was also not seen.
Doctor, in your opinion, is there any basis from all of the material you have reviewed in this case, now taking you beyond June 13th and to today's date, which would cause you to have changed your opinion that it would have been appropriate to have taken a sexual assault kit in this case?
No, I still feel it's not indicated, and I would not have recommended it.
Doctor, does, I have just a moment here.
Certainly.
Doctor, is there a manual that is put out by your office to be used by your investigators called a Physical Evidence Policy and Procedures Manual?
Yes, there is.
And basically, is the last manual, full manual that was published in August of 1987?
Yes.
Who is, if there's one or if there are more, who are the authors of this manual?
The procedures for physical evidence collection started somewhere in the early 80s, and I think the manual was compiled by one of our senior criminalists at that time under the direction of the chief of laboratories at that time. And I think the manual came in place sometime in 88, I think, 87 or 88, the first date. It was
You have to keep your voice up again, Doctor.
it was first issued on February 4th, 1988.
Doctor, I want to invite your attention, I can show court and counsel. To page it's 8.1. I shouldn't have given the manual over to you, Doctor. I lost my place. Hang on one second, if you would, please. Eight 8.13.1 on a page starting with the heading Sexual Assault Evidence. Is this in fact what your manual indicates is to be a process or procedure followed in your office? Under definition, evidence collected from the genitals, body orifices, and other body surfaces for the purpose of determining if a sexual act may have occurred and who may have participated in that act. Then a heading called Collection, Packaging, and Submission Guidelines. Evaluation for sexual assault evidence shall be made whenever the investigation indicates that a sexual act, whether non-consensual or consensual, may have occurred in association with a death by other than natural causes, whenever identification of the last sexual partner may be of value to the investigation, whenever elimination of sexual activity may be of value to the investigation, or when a person involved in the investigation requests that such evaluation be made. It shall be the responsibility of the assigned coroner's investigator and supervising investigator on duty to determine when sexual assault evidence evaluation is required and to notify the criminalistics laboratory staff as soon as possible. The assigned deputy medical examiner may also request sexual assault evidence evaluation if the need has not been previously recognized. The body shall not be processed in any manner that might alter or destroy the sexual assault evidence until examined and released by the assigned criminalist. If the decedent has died in a hospital and the hospital or police records indicate that sexual assault evidence was collected ante-mortem, a criminalist shall be requested to verify the collection and determine if additional evidence collection is indicated. Evaluation for and collection of sexual assault evidence shall be made by a coroner's criminalist. The assigned criminalist shall determine what evidence to collect based upon evaluation of the reported circumstances, the decedent's sex and body condition, and personal observations. The prepared evidence kit materials shall be used for sexual assault evidence collection whenever feasible. And then it goes on as to the forms to be filled out and the processing. Is that correct, Doctor?
Yes.
And was that, in fact, a policy in your office in June of 1994?
Yes.
Did you, in your opinion, follow that procedure in making a determination that a sexual assault kit was not needed in this particular case?
Yes.
Doctor, in your opinion, does a sexual assault kit assist you as a forensic pathologist in establishing a range for time of death that would be between 9 o'clock in the evening and 12:13 in the morning. 9 o'clock, June 12th, 1994, and 12:13 in the morning, June 13th, 1994, when Officer Risky first found the bodies?
No,
Why not?
because just by finding evidence of seminal material or sperms there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they died between that time.
In fact, is it a matter that is handled in a standard forensic pathology text regarding aging of death based upon the presence of something called motile sperm?
There are two issues which are done. One is motile sperms.
First of all, what's motile sperm?
When you get the vaginal aspirate, you look under the microscope to see whether there's motility to the sperms, because sperms are motile.
What is motile, motility?
Motility means the sperms will be able to move around, even are able to move around, and that's how after an intercourse takes place, the sperms are able to reach the fallopian tubes and fertilize the ova. So that is a normal process which the sperms are capable of physiologically.
And even after a person dies, if you take a sample from the vaginal area and you're looking for sperm, you can microscopically see sperm moving around?
Yes.
What, if any, significance does the presence of moving sperm have on the issue of when the ejaculation occurred?
It would, you can see motile sperms, the average is less than up to 4 hours, but people have seen motile sperms up to 60 hours. But generally the average is 4 hours.
So 4 hours before time of death, you can still see motile sperm?
No.
I'm
You
sorry.
can-
From an ejaculation 4 hours before death and a sample taken after death, you may still see motile sperm on average?
No, the motility of the sperms is for 4 hours, and that could go on up to 60 hours. And so it has nothing to do with the death process itself. It is the sperm itself.
I
So it's a
understand.
different.
I understand, but if we put it in context of a person dies sometime after there has been ejaculation, and you're looking at a slide to look for moving sperm, would it be accurate to say that if you see moving sperm, it means that on average, that sperm could have been placed inside the vaginal tract as much as 4 hours before death?
That could be one conclusion, depending on that the sample being collected immediately after death, and you see motile sperms, then that could be one conclusion. But I said there is variability to this, and it could go on up to 60 hours. They have seen motile sperms.
So if you were trying to evaluate whether Nicole Brown Simpson died between 10:15 in the evening on June 12th and 11 o'clock in the evening on June 12th, would the presence, just assuming hypothetically there had ever been motile sperm collected and seen, would the presence of motile sperm have permitted you to make that evaluation?
No, you cannot estimate a time of death from that, especially for such a narrow time frame. And even if it's not a narrow time frame, I would not estimate a time of death from the presence of sperms because you have so much variability in it.
Doctor, is there another aspect of seminal fluid which may have some value in giving a range for when the ejaculation occurred versus when the sample was obtained?
Yes, there is another test which you can do chemically. It is for acid phosphatase. It's an enzyme which is present in your prostatic secretions. And when you ejaculate, your prostatic secretions are also mixed with your ejaculation. And if you calculate the amount of acid phosphatase, and they are measured in what is called Bodansky units, BODANSKY. And if you have a level between 10 and 30, it would indicate that the intercourse took place before a short time before the specimen was collected.
What is a short time when you're using these units?
That is not defined because you can find it up to several hours, but usually you don't find it more than 10 to 24 hours after that. You don't get a high level. You need to get a level of 10 to 30.
Are there values actually given in a forensic pathology text, such as a Spitz-Fisher edition that we used with a couple of photographs earlier in your testimony?
Yes.
Doctor, do you recall off the top of your head what those values are?
10 to 30, and I think
10 to 30,
Bodansky units.
okay, and translating into a time frame of,
Up to, it favors that the intercourse took place just before you obtain the specimen.
what is just before defined in the text?
If somebody had coitus just before death.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor? By the way, doctor, if there's motile sperm, is there something that is non-moving sperm that can be seen?
Just because what happens is the motility is due to the tail of the sperm, and you can lose the tail after a certain time, and you only see the heads of the sperms, and that you can see for a longer time because they can be there in the vaginal area.
Doctor, what is the time frame during which you can see the presence of non-moving sperm, that is, time of ejaculation to time of sample collection?
The non-moving sperm depends on the stage of decomposition of the body. If the body is not decomposed, they have found sperms in frozen bodies even after a week. Depends on whether the decomposition is there. Decomposition is post-mortem deterioration of the body. If that takes place also, these tissues can deteriorate.
The doctor, inviting your attention, if I could, to pages 790 and 791 of
Yes.
Spitz-Fisher's third edition. Have you reviewed that material?
Yes, I have.
Has that material been relied upon in any way by you in forming opinions regarding the time frame regarding the acid phosphatase determination?
Yes.
And I don't know if you want to take a look. Does this refresh your memory with respect to any specific?
It says values ranging from 10 to 30 Bodansky units suggest rape occurred shortly before death rather than intercourse 5 to 10 hours earlier.
And other than that, does it define what shortly before is?
No.
And is there any literature of which you are aware, which is a scientific study of the relationship between Bodansky units of acid phosphatase levels and confirmed times between ejaculation and time of death and sample collection?
Not reviewed other literature.
Or are you aware of any such?
There must be information in the literature which I have not reviewed.
When you say there must be, are you aware of any?
No.
Doctor, taking all this into account, in your opinion, would a sexual assault kit from Nicole Brown Simpson have been of any value to you as a forensic pathologist in either identifying the killer or killers of Nicole Brown Simpson? It's a multiple question. Any value to you in identifying the killer or killers?
No.
And in identifying the specific time of death?
No.
Why not as to each?
Because there was evidence of, let's assume there was consensual sexual intercourse, because we don't have evidence of assault here. Even then, it doesn't mean that person is the person who did these murders. Now, coming to time of death, I've already mentioned that there's these time ranges which you have discussed for the sperm and acid phosphatase. You cannot estimate a time of death from that.
And doctor, have you taken into account in any way non-medical observations, such as evidence that may have been presented in this case regarding telephone records and telephone calls between Nicole Brown Simpson and persons such as her mother,
Yes,
Mezzaluna Restaurant?
yes.
You have reviewed that material?
Not reviewed, I'm aware of the material.
And with respect to subsequent contact between Nicole Brown Simpson and the Mezzaluna Restaurant?
I'm aware of that also.
Doctor, is there anything of which you are aware which leads you to believe, from a forensic pathologist standpoint, that there was a sexual assault of this woman?
No.
Now, is there anything further with respect to photograph B1 that has not been covered?
There is also intense blood staining of the left side of the face, which would go along with the blood loss from her neck wounds, which I discussed earlier.
And that is all fully consistent with what you have seen in the crime scene photographs?
Yes. I'll just have a sip of water.
Okay. Anything further on photograph B1?
No.
May I have just one more? Certainly. Doctor, let me invite your attention now back to a photo that you briefly used in conjunction with photograph B31, and that is photograph B12. Do you see that?
Yes.
What are we looking at in that particular photograph?
We are seeing 4 small abrasions arranged in the right shoulder region. Of course, you are still seeing the cut wound which I described in the right ring finger. In addition, we have a small scar in the right posterior shoulder area. We also have a smaller abrasion, reddish brown in color, adjacent to the scar in the back of the shoulder. And I have the measurements.
Could you get your wound chart, which is our exhibit, I believe, 350?
Yes, B12, the measurements.
Keep your voice up, remember, Doctor.
Yes, the abrasion which is next to the scar here is 1/8 of an inch, and the scar itself is 3/8 of an inch by 3/16 of an inch. This is all my measurements from the 1:1 photographs. The 4 pink-brown abrasions on the shoulder range from 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch, 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch, 1/8 inch, and 1/4 inch by 1/16 inch. So those are the measurements, and they are been described.
When you say they have been described, have all of the injuries that you have described now in B12, we've already covered the aspect of the right hand, have all of these injuries been described by Dr. Golden in his original autopsy protocol?
Yes, but yes,
What's the but?
he has described them as postmortem excoriations.
We're going to get to the board to show that specifically, but is a term post-mortem excoriation of significance to you as a forensic pathologist?
Yes,
What is that?
it would indicate that he felt it was a postmortem injury.
What is an excoriation?
Excoriation is another term which you can use for an abrasion. Basically, the skin surface has been peeled off.
In your opinion, is it a post-mortem excoriation?
No,
Why not?
because the appearance of the injury looks perimortem in the shoulder area, which is pinkish brown and rather antemortem, and the one on the back of this shoulder blade is antemortem also.
Doctor, from the appearance of these abrasions, do you have an opinion as to the manner in which they were inflicted?
They are non-specific blunt force injury. They don't have any pattern to them, and they're not fatal.
Are they of any significance, in your opinion, to any of the big-ticket issues that you've reviewed in this case?
No.
Can you determine how long Nicole Brown Simpson's heart was beating after she received those abrasions?
within few minutes or even less than a minute.
And is there any way to be definite with respect to that timing from what you see in the photograph B12?
No.
Before we move to the boards, doctor, is there anything else seen in this photograph that you wish to discuss?
No.
And perhaps we can all switch positions and we'll move this forward. Your Honor, we're putting up 0B and 2B
Thank you.
from our 349 collection.
Thank you.
Doctor, first of all, can you tell us where in the protocol there is any entry reflecting any of these abrasions that you've described from photograph B12?
Page 3.
Please show us where there is such an entry.
Paragraph 1, line 4, examination of the posterior surface of the trunk,
And how far does that run, doctor, to cover what we're looking at?
up to line 8.
Your Honor, where Dr. Lakshmanan has outlined with the pointer, I'm going to take a red marker and enclose that area, and I'll write at the side B12. Doctor, excuse me. Dr. Golden has included the terms compatible with ant to insect bites.
Yeah.
As a forensic pathologist, does the term excoriation have some correlation with being caused by ant or insect bites?
Well, that's a term which is used by some physicians to describe if they do see ant and insect bites.
Doctor, in your opinion, are those abrasions which you have described as antemortem rather than postmortem as described by Dr. Golden on page 3 due to ant or insect bites?
No,
Why not?
because the appearance have more reddish brown or pinkish brown in color, which would indicate that they happen during life. And I don't think they are postmortem excoriations.
Doctor, did you also examine from the crime scene photographs, our board 355, the area of Nicole Brown Simpson's back, which in the photograph B12 contains these abrasions?
Yes, I did.
What did you examine that area of the back for with respect to this issue of ant or insect bites, if you did that examination?
I did the examination to see whether there was any ant activity on the body, number one. Number two, also confirmed the appearance of the wound, which was the same appearance as I see it in these photographs. You can see it in the right shoulder area very well.
Doctor, in your experience as a forensic pathologist with respect to ant or insect bites, is it your experience that ants or insects operate individually?
No,
How do they operate?
in large groups.
And do you expect to see, if there is a photograph at the crime scene of the body at a time when ants are inflicting this kind of post-mortem excoriation, to see evidence of that?
You would see evidence of ant activity if it was present.
Why don't we finish with the diagram, and then we'll get to the photograph by moving it out when we move the diagram down. This diagram, Form 20, does it contain any reference to the same aspect that's covered in page 3, or on page 3, the excoriations?
Yes. Right in the right posterior shoulder area here.
And there's some entry along the right side of what appear to be several diagonal lines.
Yes, it shows that there are abrasions present, and it says appears post-mortem.
Where you've outlined that, doctor, with your pointer, I'll circle in red and write B12 on our board, Form 20. Now, doctor, in the photograph, I believe you identified areas beyond what is shown in this diagram as an area of abrasion, antemortem abrasions, is that correct?
Yes,
Is that other area, or are those other areas shown on figure 20?
it's a small abrasion right here in this shoulder blade area, which was not diagrammed.
When you say here, let me just circle that. Is this the area, doctor?
Yes,
I'll
Small.
just-
yes, that's fine.
No, it's not fine if it's not accurate.
It's just a dot of an abrasion, it's not a big one.
Okay. I'll circle the area in general, and I'll write B12 in blue on
Okay.
Form 20. Is that at least circling the area?
Yes.
All right. Now, doctor, number one, is it a mistake in your judgment for Dr. Golden to have determined that this was a post-mortem excoriation or abrasion?
It's a mistake to call it post-mortem when it's ante-mortem.
Is it a mistake to attribute the source of the abrasion or excoriation to ant or insect bites?
Yes.
Is it a mistake not to have fully diagrammed on a form such as 20 the totality of the abrasion seen in photograph B12?
Yes.
Individually and collectively, doctor, do any of these mistakes by Dr. Golden have significance on any of the big ticket questions?
No,
Why not?
because these are very small abrasions, and sometimes you can fail to document them when you have a case with so many injuries to document, but they have no significance to the cause of death and manner of death, or to explain further details as to the weapon or bleeding patterns, etc.
Is there anything further for photograph B12 that we need diagram 20?
No.
I'm going to take down diagram 20, and I'm briefly going to pull out Exhibit 355.
Is that 355?
I believe so. I can't see the exhibit numbers on the front.
Lower right hand.
It's either 54 or 55. 54, Mr. Lynch tells me.
354.
This is going to be up so briefly. We're going to have counsel moving very quickly back. But doctor, do you see in this photograph, CS11, the area of the back, which is seen also in B12 and which contains the abrasions that you've identified?
This photograph doesn't show it very clearly, but this is the area where we are looking at in that photograph. I've seen other photographs where there is better outlined.
Let's try CS12 on the same exhibit.
This is the area here. I've seen a better picture than this.
All right. A photograph that we are not using, is that correct?
Yes.
Doctor, in looking at these two photographs, CS11, CS12, and the photograph that you have reviewed, do you see any evidence of ant or insect activity on the back of Nicole Brown Simpson?
Not on the photographs.
Is that of significance then in evaluating whether in fact the source of those abrasions is due to ant or insect bites, as indicated by Dr. Golden in his protocol?
Yes.
In what manner?
I'm sorry.
Is it of significance to you?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I catch it.
All right, let me slow it down. Is the absence of evidence of ant or insect activity in the area of the back shown in the 3 photos, the 2 here and the other that you reviewed, of significance to you in assessing the source of those abrasions seen on the back in photograph B12?
Yes.
In what way?
The absence of it would indicate to me that there's there's no ant activity at the time these photographs were taken.
And if there had been a source for these abrasions from ant activity, would you expect them to be present in these 3 photographs?
I would expect them to be present.
All right. Why don't we take this down, Counsel? We're going to go right back to that page 3 of the protocol, Your Honor.
Mr. Lynch, you can leave that one there.
Doctor, because this page has a reference, I want to go back again to the B1 photograph and the issue of a sexual assault kit and invite your attention to the second full sentence on page 3, the sentence that is immediately above the outlined box for B12. Is that one of the entries that you reviewed in Dr. Golden's protocol concerning the issue of trauma to the genital area of Nicole Brown Simpson?
Yes.
Would you read to us, please, what is said in that one sentence?
The genitalia are that of an adult female with no gross evidence of injury.
And I'll outline that in blue on the poster board size and write B1 on the right-hand margin. Now, Doctor, is there a specific area of the protocol that discusses an examination of the genital area of Nicole Brown Simpson?
It should be in the latter part of the protocol under urogenital system. Page 12 of the protocol.
And Doctor, there is an entry, genital system, parentheses, female, close parentheses. What does this refer to?
This refers to the internal examination of the genitalia of Miss Brown Simpson.
And let me outline that in red. That block of sentences, and I'll write out at the side B1, right side B1. Doctor, can you translate this into lay person's terms, what these observations mean?
The information is that the uterus, tubes, and adnexa are anatomic. That means the internal genitalia, which are the uterus, the fallopian tubes, and the ovaries are normal, in normal position and normal appearance. The cut surface of the uterus shows no lesions and a thin, light brown endometrium.
First of all, what is a lesion? Lesion. What is a lesion?
Lesion is looking for injury or abnormal pathology, because you can have, in uterus, you can have, common thing is fibroid. You can have a fibroid of the uterus that is not present. There could be what's called adenomyosis, which is presence of endometrial tissue in the muscle of the uterus. That's not present. You can see it grossly. So that's what is meant by lesion when you look at the uterus and you're looking for abnormal pathology versus normal pathology, and that's not there. And then the endometrium is thin, light brown. That means the person reflects the description of the endometrium itself, which would mean that she's not it would mean that it's in the stage of the endometrium when it's in what's called the stage after. Grossly, it would mean that it's not in the secretory stage or the proliferative stage.
Let me shortcut this by asking, Is everything normal with
Yes.
respect to that aspect of the internal examination?
Yes.
All right. How about the last sentence?
The vagina has its normal mucosal surface and no lesions or injuries are evident, and it's self-explanatory. There was no pathology seen and there was no injury in the vagina present.
Doctor, in your experience in examining cases of rape, murder, does one normally expect to see some kind of injury or lesion in the vaginal area?
You may see in some cases,
And in some you may not?
yes.
Anything further about this particular entry?
Nothing else to which I need to discuss.
All right. Let's take this one down.
This is 355?
Yes, Your Honor, we're back to that. Now, Doctor, is there anything further to discuss on B12?
No.
Let's move then, if we could please, to B11, the photograph which is immediately to the left.
Yes.
What are we looking at in that photograph, Doctor?
In the back of the right side of the neck, you see a U-shaped abrasion, which is more well defined in its lower, in one limb of the U, which is the lower part, which is on the lower part of the U. The U being horizontally oriented, and this abrasion which you see is also interrupted. That means you have space of intact skin between the points of abrasion.
Does the interruption of an abrasion have any significance to you in evaluating how an abrasion such as this comes to be received?
That is the, yes, basically the object or surface which caused this injury was coming in intermittent contact with the skin surface. That would be one interpretation.
Can you explain what you mean by intermittent contact?
If you go back to B5, I think you can.
You have to keep your voice up. remember,
B5
Doctor.
doesn't show, it's already, the clothing has been taken off. If you look at the dress in B1, there is a neck strap here, which holds up, and that strap had a hook, there's a hook to that strap in the back, and one possible source for this abrasion could be from that strap during the, at some point, when Ms. Simpson was
I just wanted you to have an opportunity, Doctor. I won't put the board up. The crime scene photos, 354. Does that show what you're attempting to?
yes, it shows it in BCS 12.
All right, let me put up Exhibit 354 then, and ask you to please show us what it is that you're trying to use as an example of an interrupted abrasion source.
This strap, you can see it here just below her hairline, the back of the neck. It's a thin strap, which is part of this dress.
And how does that come into play, if,
Well,
assuming that's the source, to create this interrupted abrasion that you've seen?
At some point, the strap could have been pulled backwards to rub against the skin surface there, and it could have been one possible source for it.
Doctor, are you able to determine whether this abrasion was received before death as an ante-mortem abrasion?
Yes, it's an ante-mortem abrasion.
How are you able to tell that?
The appearance, the reddish-brown color, and the features I described.
Does it have any significance, in your opinion, to any of the big ticket questions that you've talked about and reviewed for this case?
No,
Why not?
because it doesn't play a part in the cause of death or manner of death or the other issues I discussed already, bleeding patterns, evaluation of sharp force injury. It's a non-specific, it's a non-specific blunt force injury.
Did Dr. Golden address this in his protocol?
He did, but he didn't describe it as U-shaped, but he has addressed it.
Would you have expected him to describe it as U-shaped based upon what you see in the photograph?
Yes, but the other limb of the U is very faint, so if it is not looked at closely, you may interpret it as a linear abrasion and rather than U-shaped.
A linear abrasion?
Yes,
Meaning,
straight, because you don't see the other limb as clearly as the lower part of the U.
did Dr. Golden diagram this particular abrasion?
He has.
And is it addressed in any way in an addendum?
No.
Is there anything, before we move back then to see the protocol and the addendum, protocol and diagram, about photograph B11?
Nothing else.
Did you ask someone who acts as a consultant to your office to look at this particular abrasion for an interpretation as to possible bite mark?
Yes, I did.
Who did you ask to look at this?
Dr. Vale, he's our forensic odontology consultant.
Vale, V-A-L-E?
Yes, Gerald Vale, Gerald Vale.
And what is a forensic odontologist?
He is a forensic odontologist, is a dentist who specializes in forensic work, and their role would be in identification of dissidents by comparing the dental remains. The other function is they help in bite mark evaluations.
What is bite mark?
Bite mark is the mark left on a body surface by the bite of another person, and what the forensic odontologist would do would examine the mark, take what is called an exemplar of the mark using certain material, and also have that available in case they have a potential suspect to compare. They will examine the suspect's teeth and see whether there are features which match with the mark which is seen on the body.
In this particular case, was Dr. Vale asked to evaluate this abrasion as a possible bite mark after the autopsy had been completed?
Not after the autopsy was completed. It was only later when the body had already been released, and much later actually, in September sometime in 94.
When I said after, I meant literally after,
Okay.
at any time after. But it was after, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And in essence, the body was not available for Dr. Vale to personally examine.
That is correct.
But was Dr. Vale provided both with the type of photograph we're looking at in B11, as well as the life-size photographs that you have reviewed of the same area for evaluating this issue?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
You may answer the question.
Yes, yes, he reviewed the original photographs, and then he requested 1:1 photographs. He requested to examine the clothing, and all this was arranged for Dr. Vale, who then gave his opinion on this particular injury.
Did he in fact issue reports to your office?
Yes, he did.
Is Dr. Vale, in his consulting role as a forensic odontologist, considered an employee of the coroner's office?
Yes,
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
You may answer the question.
yes,
And did he in fact submit his report on a form like we've seen in these other forms that has a specific number used by the coroner's office in the course of its official responsibilities?
yes.
What kind of form is that?
It's a consultant form, Form 13, which is used for this purpose.
Now, is there anything else preliminarily to discuss on B11 before we look at the protocol, the diagram, and Dr. Vale's reports?
Yes, he did not think it was a bite mark.
All right. Let's,
Motion to strike is non-responsive, calling for hearsay.
Overruled.
and your answer is? He did not think it was a bite mark?
from the photographic review.
And Mr. Kelberg, 10:30.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. We're going to be using, Your Honor, 0B, I believe that's 2B, and 10B from our 349 collection. Doctor, let's start with the protocol itself. Where is any entry from Dr. Golden concerning this U-shaped abrasion you've identified in photograph B11?
Page 3.
Page 3?
Yes.
Where is the entry?
He actually has included in the same paragraph because he has used it, the upper back, right side, and medial part of the scapula, and he refers to upper back in diagram 20 to this area here. So that is where he has documented it.
All right, first of all, would it be accurate to say that he has, in this paragraph on page 3 that we've already outlined in red as B12, he has incorporated a description of both the B12 blunt force trauma and what is seen by you in the B11 photograph?
Yes.
All right, so what I'll write is, on by B12, I'll also write B11 in blue by the box. But there's a separate entry, is there, Doctor, on Form 20?
Yes, he has marked it in the back of the right neck area, and he has called them antemortem, red brown, and appears, here also it says appears antemortem and anti-abrasion, red brown, and he has marked it here. This is the same injury.
All right. Both where I'm pointing, I don't want to mark it until I'm clear. Where I'm pointing, first of all, here, Doctor?
No, this abrasion description could apply to this one, but he has marked it separately as AM, also antemortem. So this could reflect for this and this, but in both he has also given notation being antemortem.
All right. Is it, in your interpretation, this entry in the right-hand corner refers to these two somewhat diagonal lines?
Yes.
Let me circle that in blue, and I'll write B11, excuse me. Now, Doctor, when you were testifying a moment or so ago, you said he didn't describe it as a U shape.
Yes.
And is the basis on that, which you testified to that, the fact that in the diagram they appear to be in line with each other?
Yes.
In your opinion, is it a mistake for Dr. Golden not to have shown that abrasion to be a U-shaped abrasion as you see it in the photograph?
I already thought I discussed it. The upper part of the U is very faint, and if you have not perceived it, you may describe it as a linear as he has done.
Would you expect him to perceive it in a meticulous examination?
Yes.
And if he failed to perceive it and failed to record it, are those mistakes?
Yes.
Any significance to them
No.
for the same reason?
Yes.
Anything further as to protocol and that diagram for this particular abrasion?
No.
Let me put up, why don't we take down the I'm sorry, Dr. Lakshmanan wants to add something, is that correct?
Yeah, he didn't describe it, he described it as ante-mortem in the diagram, but here he has included it as a post-mortem.
So, again, on page 3, and let me outline in blue the words post-mortem injuries within that box referring to B11 and B12. That would be different than how he has actually described it on the form used at time of autopsy, at least for this particular, what you say is a U-shaped abrasion,
Yes, and he has recognized it as being ante-mortem.
according to his diagrammatic entry, is that correct?
Yes,
And in your opinion, that is accurate, that it is ante-mortem?
yes,
Anything further on that?
no.
If Mr. Lynch could take down the protocol and we'll substitute. I'm not sure. Can we put it back up? I don't know what the weight of this particular easel is. Looking at this, are you familiar with this particular type of form?
Yes.
In general, what is this type of form?
This is a consultant report by the odontologist. It's a consultant report, and here we have a odontology consultant report.
And is this one of the reports received from Dr. Vale?
Yes,
And is this a report that is expected to be completed at or near the time of the events which he is describing in the report?
yes,
Is this report kept in the ordinary course of the official business of the coroner's office?
yes.
Now, in essence, what does this say?
That he has examined the mark in the back of the right side of the neck. He has examined certain other marks in the lower right back, and he has reviewed a lot of photographs. And this is the point when he examined initially, and then he wanted some 1:1 photographs and clothing examined, and he's given a follow-up report after this one.
Doctor, from your testimony, does this report discuss evaluations of things besides this U-shaped area that we've been talking about in photo B11?
Yes,
And matters which we have not yet discussed in one or more photographs?
that is correct.
What part of this September 9, 1994 report specifically refers to an evaluation of the U-shaped abrasion?
Photograph A,
And I'll outline that in red on page 1 of the September 9 Form 13 and write B11 out at the side. And doctor, at the bottom where it says initialed by GLV, that's Dr. Vale.
yes,
You mentioned something about providing life-size one-to-one, as you described, one-to-one photograph, life-size photograph, and an opportunity to look at the dress of Nicole Brown Simpson?
yes,
And that's what Dr. Vale has included in this report?
yes. And he also requested my criminalist, Mr. Stephen Dowell, to look at these photographs and the clothing.
There is also a second signature that falls below Dr. Vale's on this form. Who is Dr. Anselmo?
He is the co-director of the School of Dentistry at USC, but he's also another forensic odontology consultant who works for our office.
In the same manner that Dr. Vale does?
Yes.
Now flipping to a third page, this appears to be another Form 13, this time dated September 14th, 1994. What is this document, if you're familiar with it, Doctor?
Yes, this is the document which Dr. Vale prepared after reviewing the clothing in the LAPD lab and also the 1:1 photographs, and he generated a report.
And what part, if any, of this report is discussing the U-shaped abrasion and possible source or sources for it?
Second paragraph in the conclusion section of Form 13, signed on September 15th, 94.
This entire paragraph, Doctor?
Yes.
And I'll write B11 after I've outlined it in red. Doctor, for the record, would you read what Dr. Vail, Dr. Anselmo, and Mr. Dowell have included in that paragraph in the report?
Regarding the mark on the back of the neck, right side, it remains our opinion that this is not a bite mark after having considered the possibilities of a bite in the vertical axis and in the horizontal axis. We do not exclude the possibility that the hook on the neck strap caused some or all of the mark, noting some similarity between the shape of the hook and the upper portion of the mark.
You have examined the clothing of Nicole Brown Simpson that is described in this report, have
Yes.
you, Doctor?
I have.
And Doctor, based upon Dr. Vail, Dr. Anselmo, and Mr. Dowell's report, and based upon your evaluation of all of the materials you've reviewed, do you have an opinion that is any different from the opinions expressed in that paragraph as to the source or sources for that U-shaped abrasion?
No.
Your Honor, I think we're done with this, and this may be an appropriate time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess, mid-morning recess at this time. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case, conduct any deliberations, or allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case, and we'll stand in recess for 15 minutes. All right? Thank you.
Very briefly on.
Paid as to the Brown-Simpson autopsy.
I hope to finish by the noon hour.
He indicated he hoped to finish the Brown-Simpson autopsy by the noon hour. Never mind. Gentlemen, please be seated. Let the record reflect we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. And Doctor, would you resume the witness stand? Mr. Kelberg, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, as long as we had the protocol up, I wanted to just quickly go over another aspect of Dr. Golden's preliminary hearing testimony and inviting court and counsel to page 71 and lines 7 through 19.
Mr. Lynch, could you move this exhibit back because it's blocking jurors number 1?
And incidentally, Your Honor, one of the bailiffs was kind enough to point out to us there may be some difficulty by one or more of the jurors in seeing the easel boards that would be closer to the door used by the jury. Obviously, we can move these in any manner that will give everyone a full view.
Any jurors, I'm confident all of our jurors know by now that if they can't see anything, all they have to do is raise their hand. All right.
Now, Doctor, we have up on the easel page 7 of the protocol, and I want to invite your attention in particular back to that photograph of B31 regarding the ring finger versus the index finger. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And as I recall from your testimony, Dr. Golden, in his protocol, inaccurately describes that particular injury as being to the right index finger rather than the ring finger. Is that a correct recitation of your testimony?
Yes.
Doctor, in reviewing Dr. Golden's preliminary hearing testimony, Did you review the following questions and answers from page 71? Question, now doctor, during the course of your autopsy as performed on Nicole Brown Simpson's body, did you notice any injuries to her hands? Answer, yes. Question, tell us about that, sir. Answer, referring to my notes, my autopsy notes, protocol, to refresh my memory, on the index finger, on the right index finger, there was a 5/8 inch long cut of the skin adjacent to the distal knuckle. It involved the skin only, and it had a tangential cut which would indicate that it was shelved. It didn't go in straight. It was an oblique cut which would indicate a shelving or tangential cut. Did you review those questions and answers, doctor?
Yes, I did.
Doctor, in your opinion, did Dr. Golden make a mistake in that testimony regarding the location of that particular injury?
Yes, he did.
In essence, did he repeat in his testimony the mistake that is in the typewritten portion of the protocol?
Yes.
And again, is this mistake of any significance on the big ticket issues?
No.
Now, doctor, if we can get our photograph board back, 355.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, I now want to invite your attention to a photograph that is designated B9 on Exhibit 355.
Yes.
What are we looking at in that photograph?
There is evidence of a blunt force injury to the right lower back, and there also appears to be an evidence of a dress impression above it, below the right shoulder blade area.
When you say a dress impression, are you referring to any specific garment?
Yes, the black garment Ms. Brown Simpson was wearing.
Doctor, is this the other aspect of the back of Nicole Brown Simpson which was evaluated by Drs. Vale and Anselmo and your criminalist, Mr. Dowell,
Yes.
and discussed in their reports that we've seen and we'll see again with respect to this area on the Form 13s?
Yes.
Doctor, I want to move first, though, to this area. You said there's evidence of blunt force trauma seen in the photograph. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you outline the area that you see? And with the pointer, you're making a circle that is an area directly above the top horizontal portion of the measuring card, and it's up approximately 1.5 to 2 inches from that same area when you look at it on the photograph?
That would be a fair statement.
That's accurate?
Yes.
And keep your voice up, please, doctor. What are we looking at with respect to that blunt force trauma?
You're looking at an area of patchy contusion injury measuring about 3.5 inches in the horizontal axis. That is, in the photograph, it's on a side-to-side measurement, and 2.25 inches in the vertical axis. That would be in the photograph in up-down configuration, and it's mottled and patchy.
What does mottled mean?
That means there are areas of skin which does not show contusion, and there's areas of skin which show the contusion.
Is that of significance to you as a forensic pathologist?
Yes,
Why?
because it's an, even though it's evidence of a blunt force injury, and that would indicate that the blunt force which caused the injury had an uneven surface.
What do you mean by an uneven surface?
If you remember the scalp contusion which we discussed yesterday on the right side of the head, it was one rounded contusion, and here in this particular contusion, it's not one continuous contusion. There is areas of interruption, and that would favor it being an irregular surfaced object which caused this blunt force injury, which resulted in this bruising of the right lower back.
What source or sources could be the responsible agent for that kind of blunt force trauma as we see in this photograph B9?
She had the dress in between the injury and on the skin surface and the force which caused the injury. So naturally the dress would be an intermediate object which would prevent getting a specific pattern. There is no specific pattern. One example could be an uneven, a short foot, like a sole of a shoe could do it, or even a fist with. But for the fist, you need more, several impacts.
Let's back up for 1 second. The dress that Nicole Brown Simpson was wearing, as seen in the crime scene photographs, was covering the area of the body that is shown in the photograph B9 with this mottled contusion?
Yes.
Doctor, could you slide me the board that's directly there? And let's see if we can do this. I'm pulling, for the record, Your Honor, I've pulled our Exhibit 355 out just enough so we can still see the photograph B9, and I've covered the rest with our Exhibit 354.
You have, as I told you, an impression of a dress in the lower right back below this shoulder blade area. And if you look at crime scene photograph 12, you can see that that area corresponds to the upper margin of this dress in the back portion of the dress. So this area of bruising is below that dress line in this region here. So this is what I meant by that the dress was interposed between the blunt force which caused that injury and the skin surface. So it does not allow to be specific about a pattern, because the dress would be an interfering kind of object between the blunt force and the skin.
Doctor, you indicated that one possible source for that appearance of a mottled contusion would be the sole of a foot, or shoe, I think you said.
Yes, short foot, I said.
How would that, assuming hypothetically that is the source, how can that create that kind of appearing contusion?
If the shoe has a rubber sole with irregular surface, because you can have different patterns to the sole of the shoe, like a waffle pattern, which is one of the common patterns you see in a shoe's under surface. What would happen is if somebody causes blunt force injury with a short foot to the back, the protrusions of the undersurface of the shoe could leave marks like this. It could, but you cannot really specify that it is the shoe. It will be difficult.
Doctor, do you hold yourself out as an expert in shoe patterns?
No.
Do you hold yourself out as an expert in shoe comparison?
No.
And so as a forensic pathologist, in talking about a possible sole of a shoe as a source, you are not attempting to specify any specific shoe in this case, is that accurate?
That is correct.
Or specify any type of shoe. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Now, doctor, how is it, assuming it's a shoe, that the contusion can be created? What are the forces at play that result in this kind of mottled appearance?
What happens is when you get forcible compression of the soft tissues of the, I'm just giving the same possible source as, I'm not saying that is the source. Let's just take that as an example.
I understand,
Yeah,
hypothetically.
hypothetical. Because of the uneven surface of the shoe, because of the waffle pattern, you have ridges and grooves in the shoe surface. So what will happen is when you get compression of the body by such a surface, the skin will get pinched between the into the areas where there are grooves, or not grooves, in a waffle pattern it would be the depressions, and that would result in the bruising of those areas, whichever is affected by that part of the shoe. And you may have areas which don't have the bruising because of the raised part of the shoe.
What do you mean by compression?
Compression means the soft tissues are compressed against by the force of the shoe. Underlying this, you have the lower rib cage. It's actually below the rib cage, and the soft tissues there.
Hypothetically, doctor, again,
There
just,
would be an objection motion to strike that testimony as being purely speculative and not based on any special knowledge the doctor is doing this because us.
you may answer the question, doctor. I'm not sure there is a question. I think I was starting it.
It was the last answer. Proceed.
Doctor, again, hypothetically, assuming that the source for that blunt force trauma is a shoe, how, in your opinion, can that compression take place? What does the shoe have to be doing in order to create the compression that leaves this kind of mottled appearance?
It could be a kick. It could be continuous compression of the body, standing on, like standing on a person.
And when you say standing, the person who's doing the standing, putting
Naturally, it would be one shoe, one short foot on the body and one short foot on the ground.
and the short foot, I want
Short foot, S-H-O-D.
Shot, okay. A foot that is wearing a shoe?
Yes.
All right. Assuming that situation of 1 foot wearing a shoe on the body, does the person whose foot it is have to place the person's weight, transfer the person's weight to the leg and down to the foot and down to the shoe, so that weight is being applied to the back, hypothetically, of Nicole Brown Simpson?
Yes.
How long a process does that require in order for you as a forensic pathologist to expect to see the byproduct of that compression?
It's basically just like any other bruise. When you get crushing of tissues, the vessels get crushed and you get leakage of blood. And as long as the pressure is strong enough to cause that bleeding, you will see a bruising.
In your opinion, doctor, is this bruising which was received before the death of Nicole Brown Simpson?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion as to a minimum amount of time between the cause for that blunt force trauma and the actual stoppage of the heart action for Nicole Brown Simpson?
You need blood pressure for it, so as long as there was blood pressure, you would have the bruise, so it could be a few minutes before the final loss of blood pressure.
Can it be less than a few minutes?
It could be less than a few minutes too.
As I asked you before, what, in your opinion, would be a minimum amount of time that Nicole Brown Simpson's heart must have beaten between the time whatever source created that blunt force trauma was applied and the time when she died?
The bleeding would take immediately after the blunt force trauma. So if, let's say, this blunt force trauma took place a minute before death, you could see it a minute before death.
And doctor, does the rapidity with which the appearance of the blunt force trauma will be seen depend in any way on the force that is being applied?
There are two factors when you come to the back portion of the body where there's more deeper tissues, the force would be one factor. You would see it immediately after the force. Sometimes the force may not cause the injury to the superficial tissues. It will show the injury more to the deeper tissues, and that may not be seen right away, but for that you need the person to live longer so that you can see the bruising on the surface.
How much longer?
Few minutes.
Doctor, is one component of the concept of force something known as mass, M-A-S-S?
Yes, the weight.
And so basically, if we assume hypothetically that the source is a person with a shod foot, would it be an accurate statement of a concept of physics that the greater the weight of the person, the greater the force that is being applied?
Weight would be a factor, yes.
And as a factor, is it accurate to say that the more weight that's being applied, the more force that is generated?
Yes.
Assuming hypothetically, doctor, that the source is the shod foot of an individual who weighed 210 pounds, in your opinion, would that weight be sufficient to create the type of mottled contusion that is seen in photograph B9?
Objection, no foundation for
Oral.
You may answer the question, doctor.
It could cause this bruising.
Doctor, is this area of bruising described by Dr. Golden in his protocol?
No.
Is this area of bruising diagrammed by Dr. Golden in any of the diagrams available?
No.
Is this area of bruising addressed by Dr. Golden in his addendum?
No.
Is each of those failures by Dr. Golden, in your opinion, a mistake?
Yes.
Taken singularly or together, do these mistakes affect or have any significance on the big ticket issues like cause of death,
No.
manner of death,
No.
whether a single 6-inch long single-edged knife blade caused all the sharp force injuries,
No.
whether one person killed these two human beings,
No.
the blood flow pattern,
No.
the time to die,
No.
any other of these issues?
No.
Why not, doctor?
Because this is a non-specific blunt force injury. We discussed a hypothetical situation. It has nothing to do with the cause of death. It happened when the person is alive. It is an injury, and it doesn't affect the big ticket issues you just discussed.
Doctor, give us, if you can, any other examples of possible sources for that type of mottled contusion.
As I said, it could be a repetitive blunt force from a fist, closed fist, and you could get bruising because there are multiple areas of bruising here, and by repeatedly hitting the area, you could get bruising also of similar nature.
Because you've raised that as a possible source, and doctor, could you help me by taking the exhibit down? And could I ask Mr. Lynch to give me exhibit 352, please, the original set of photographs? And doctor, could you pull that down just a bit? You had mentioned in looking at the contusion to the scalp of the right side of Nicole Brown Simpson that one possible source was the rounded end of a knife. Is that correct?
Yes.
And also, let's see if we can do something similar by, again, we're going to try and show both B9, Your Honor, from the one board, and what is B20, if the jurors will excuse my leaning over, I can't quite see, B20 of board 352. A rounded end from the knife as one source, but you also mentioned it could be due to a fist. Is that
Yes.
correct? Now, doctor, if a fist had been used for either of these two types of injuries, blunt force trauma, would it necessarily follow that the person, let's assume it's the same person, that the person's fist would show evidence itself of injury.
Not necessary,
Why not?
because the force is coming from the fist, which is, in this situation, this skin is being compressed by the broad surface of the skull,
This skin is
the scalp
photograph-
skin, B20.
We'll try and remember, Doctor, to not talk on top of each other.
Okay.
Apologize to the court.
Not me, it's the court reporter.
Well, indirectly then to the court reporter through the court.
Thank you.
All right, Doctor. Go forward with your answer. I'm sorry.
The bruising to the right side of the head, if it was from a fist, you have the underlying bone here, which is a larger surface, and you would get bruising when the right side of the head is struck, because the skin and soft tissues are crushed between that and the fist force which is being applied.
The bruising to what?
To the soft tissues of the skin of the scalp on the right side of the head.
Would you expect to see bruising to the part of the fist that comes in contact with the area of the scalp?
Not necessarily,
Why not?
because of the force involved. You may or may not see the bruising to the person's hand, because you don't have the same underlying broad bony surface which you have underlying here for the tissues to be crushed.
Doctor, I want you to assume, for the sake of argument, that it was a human fist rather than the rounded or smooth end of a knife. But the fist was a hand wearing a glove, so that it was a gloved fist rather than a closed, bare fist. Would that have any impact, that's probably a poor choice of words, would that have any effect, in your opinion, on whether the fist itself would show evidence of having struck the head?
Vague as to the type of glove.
Or will.
You may answer the question, Doctor.
The glove would be a buffer for the hand or the fist which is causing the injury. So there will be less, less probability of the fist ever having any injury perceived on the skin surface.
How does the glove acting as a buffer prevent injury being seen to the fist that has come in contact with the area of the scalp where the contusion is seen in B20?
Because you have the layers of the glove itself which act like a cushion to the skin surface of the fist.
Doctor, would the same apply to this issue on B9 if a fist had been used to be the source for that blunt force trauma?
Yes.
Now, you said, as I recall your testimony a moment or so ago, that it would require more than one blow from a fist to create the modeled contusion that you see in B9. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why, in your opinion, would it require more than one?
Because of the multiple small contusions you have here, because of the, you're talking about a closed fist, to have these multiple contusions, I would expect for that to happen more than one blow to have been struck on that area, if it was a fist which caused that.
Would it be accurate to say that the largest area of the body of Nicole Brown Simpson, which is going to have impact, will be dictated by the largest area of the fist which comes in direct contact with that body?
That is correct.
So if it's a small area of the fist that comes in contact, the area that will show blunt force trauma will correspondingly be small?
That also would be a fair statement.
And is there such a thing as a glancing blow?
Yes.
What is a glancing blow?
A glancing blow is one where let's assume the fist was being used to deliver the blow. The entire fist does not impact the area being struck. Only a portion of the fist hits the area being struck. So that would be something like a glancing impact. And you see that you can see that sometimes in street fighting or boxing, where the entire blow doesn't go to the person, just a small portion goes to the other person in the fight because the head moves or the person withdraws, so the fist doesn't deliver the entire impact it was intended to deliver.
Doctor, if a glancing blow is involved, can a glancing blow nevertheless leave evidence of blunt force trauma to the body where contact is in fact made?
Yes.
If it is a glancing blow, does that have some effect on the probability that the fist itself will show evidence of having made such contact?
It may or may not show because, as I told earlier, when I discussed the scalp contusion and also this area of injury, you may not see injury on the fist, and it doesn't mean that it didn't cause the injury. But sometimes you may see some bruising also.
If it's a glancing blow, in the concept of the laws of physics, is the force that's being transmitted a lesser force than the force that is transmitted if the blow is a direct blow?
That would be also a fair statement.
And if the force is less, does that affect the likelihood that the fist will show evidence of the blow?
That is correct also. The fist would show, there's less chance the fist will show injury.
And if the glove is over the fist when all of this is taking place, does that act as an additional basis, as it's used as a cushion, to lessen the likelihood that any evidence would be seen on the fist that the fist had come in contact with the body of another person?
Yes.
Doctor, is there anything else about the blunt force trauma in B9 or the B20 contusion area involving this possible source as a fist?
No.
If Mr. Lynch could take 352 back. Now, doctor, are there more sources that you consider possibilities than a fist or a shod foot for the mottled contusion in B9?
It could be multiple blunt force from the base of the knife, as we discussed, the rounded part of the knife. Somebody was jabbing at the right lower back. That could be another source.
And for the record, Your Honor, Dr. Lakshmanan, as he was saying those words, first with his left hand making multiple sweeping motions, thank you, and with his right hand to a much lesser degree, something similar on the right side. Now, doctor, anything further about that area of mottled contusion before we discuss in a little more detail the other area that you described of your findings in B9?
No.
And we'll go, when we complete the photo itself, back to the protocol and so forth. Tell us more about this dress impression.
This dress impression is located about 2 inches above this mottled bruising, and it measures 2¼ inches in the side-to-side axis of the photograph, and it is a dress impression.
Is this something, in your opinion, I'll withdraw the question, are you able to determine from its appearance when, in relationship to the death of Nicole Brown Simpson, that impression was made?
I can't determine that.
Why not?
Because there's no, there's no reaction to this dress impression. It's just an impression of the skin, and I can't tell whether it happened before death or after death.
Is your inability to make that determination of any significance on any of the big-ticket issues?
No.
And this was another area that was evaluated by Dr. Vail, Dr. Anselmo, and Mr. Dahl, is that correct?